Chapter 7. Growing Darkness Within. "No, no! Why are you doing this?" a man begged, looking up at Makoto with his blade in position for a death strike. "I do not want to do this, but it is the decree of daimyo that all crimes be punishable by death. Failure to pay daimyo's tax is a crime." With a swoosh, Makoto's sword cut through air and its victim's neck, with one just as smoothly as the other. Before the severed head finished bouncing on the ground, Makoto flicked any residual blood from the blade before returning it to the confines of its sheath. With each needless execution, he felt a little bit of himself die within, but as a samurai, he was devoted to serving Daimyo Nobunaga without question. After months of killing citizens for every crime, Makoto felt the population had received a message of extreme punishment. The space between him and others as he walked along the busy market street had grown from a foot to 5 or more. Touching him had become a crime nobody took a chance on. This was the burden of servitude, and it caused him to doubt his existence at times. Those thoughts were instantly disposed of each time, as if removed by his sword. Abruptly, Makoto's attention was drawn to screaming. Swiftly, he ran with one hand on his weapons, ready to take action at any sign of a threat. "Help!" The call was something that he seldom heard anymore, mostly due to fear that it would lead to someone losing their head. Knowing this as he neared the screaming, he felt the need to draw his sword, but resisted so as not to conjure fear among the citizens requesting his assistance. "Hell!" People parted in front of him, revealing blood and bodies on the street ahead. "Oh, this is certainly the time for those around to fear me," Makoto thought, freeing his sword as he slowed to a walk. With the area clear of the last remaining citizen, he could see the reason they called out for help. Before him stood 2 men at the center of all the carnage, with blood dripping from their swords. Makoto could see they were Hideyoshi's soldiers. "What is the meaning of this?" Makoto demanded. Smugly, the 2 looked at Makoto with swords held at the ready. "We are here to deliver message," one said. "2 of our soldiers were killed here. We killed 10 of your peasants." Makoto had already counted the dead and was coming up short. "Looks like you are not going to reach your quota. Now you die." Before Makoto closed the distance, the same man said, "Oh, we started by finishing the reason our brothers had come here to begin with. You kill us, then that will cost you 10 more. "Yuwa," Makoto said, stopping in his tracks at the thought of his lifetime friend being dead. All he wanted to do was leave to find out if they were telling the truth, but first he had to extract justice for their crimes. Looking directly into the eyes of the guard who had been doing the speaking, Makoto replied, "Here, all crimes are punished with death, regardless of the severity. I only wish I could kill you twice." Makoto closed the distance with the enemy standing before him. He brought his sword down toward the man's head, the sword burying deep within his skull. Holding the sword steady, allowed it to pull free as the man slowly fell to his knees, dead. Looking to the other Hideyoshi guard, standing there in disbelief, Makoto said, "I notice your sword has not been drawn. Am I to assume you did not take part in this slaughter?" "Yes, you are correct," the guard said, with a slight tremble in his voice. "Very well, you can go. Take your friend with you. I don't need him stinking up the street." Eager to comply with the samurai's orders, the remaining guard ran over to his fallen partner. Several times he attempted to pick up his dead body but didn't have enough strength. Determined to do what was requested of him, he took a few deep breaths and squatted once again, feeling his side slightly brush up against the samurai's leg. But this time he was successful. His legs trembling, the guard turned to Makoto with his dead companion across his shoulders. "We will be on our way." A burning sensation in his chest made it difficult to finish speaking. Looking down, He could see where the sword had penetrated his chest, going directly into his heart. "Why?" he managed to ask before feeling the cold steel twist and pull free from his chest. "I told you that every crime is punishable by death. It is a crime to touch a samurai," Makoto said, while wiping his blade off on the dead guard just before he fell to the ground. Makoto quickly located the horses that the guards had traveled on and swung atop, riding off toward Yua's home. Concern for his friend grew with every passing minute. The life of a samurai was one with few human connections, and Makoto had fewer than most. The thumping of the horses' hooves on hard-packed soil echoed through empty woods as Yua's home came into view. Sensing death ahead, his horse slowed just as Makoto spotted two objects in front of Yua's home, Yua's head and body. Grief for his deceased friend filled Makoto. After laying Yua to rest with his family, Makoto rode quickly to Nobunaga's palace. This time, rather than pretend to speak with the guards as someone listened behind the small white panel above them, he spoke directly to it. Ryu, are you there? Open these gates. I need to report to Daimyo Nobunaga now. We have been attacked by Daimyo Hideyoshi." Minutes later, the gates behind the two guards opened to reveal Ryu standing with others behind him. Ryu never went anywhere without a guard for protection, not even to relieve himself. With news of an attack, it appeared he had quickly added two more to his security before opening the gates. "What is this attack you speak of?" Ryu asked. "I will speak to the daimyo now. You know enough," Makoto said, in a tone that even Ryu dared not challenge. Soon, Makoto walked into the throne room, where Daimyo Nobunaga and his daughter awaited. As each time before, Makoto didn't look directly at either of them, walked forward and knelt in the same spot as before, where he waited for his daimyo to give him permission to speak. Waiting long enough to ensure his power over Makoto, Nobunaga asked, "What is this news you bring us?" Makoto proceeded to tell the daimyo what he had done and what information he had. When he finished, a battle raged in his mind over control of his eyes. His mind focused on what was expected of him, while his heart yearned to gaze upon the beauty radiating from the woman carrying his child. "Ryu!" Nobunaga called. Almost before Nobunaga had finished calling his name, Ryu appeared alongside Makoto. "Yes, my daimyo." "Call on 3,000 men. We will deal with this threat once and for all. Nobody threatens my rule." Over the next few months, battles took place. Armies grew from a few thousand to tens of thousands. Makoto led many raids and killed hundreds in battle while suffering relatively few injuries. Now was the low between battles Makoto hated the most. Before him on their knees were 50 prisoners captured after the battle had ended the day before. They had to be dealt with, and in only one way. As Makoto walked alongside the long row of men with their left side facing him, he said, "You are prisoners of the great daimyo Nobunaga. You have attacked his lands and people. For that, you are to be punished. Here, the only punishment for all crimes is death." Once Makoto reached the back of the long row of men positioned on their knees, he drew his sword. The prisoner beside him shivered in fear. Admiring the flash of morning sunlight as it reflected from his blade, he speculated just how many lives had perished by their two spirits becoming one. He calmly lowered the razor-sharp edge to the side of the prisoner's neck and began walking. One by one, his sword made contact, slicing through flesh and creating a cascade of spraying blood. Fresh fallen snow turned red behind him. Once his sword touched the throat of the 50th prisoner, Makoto stopped as the edge set just beneath his skin. "What is your name? Never mind, I do not care. Get to your feet." Quickly, the prisoner stood. Holding his sword with one hand and placing the other on the man's shoulder, Makoto guided him as he turned around. slowly revealing the other 49 slumped over, with their blood glowing bright upon the snow as sunlight beamed down. "My friend, it is your lucky day." Makoto paused, feeling the prisoner trembling fiercely under his firm grip. After a few seconds of allowing the prisoner to take in the sight, he began speaking once again. "I am not sure if others are aware what becomes of those who break the law here, so I want you to provide them with the knowledge they need. Can you do this for me?" "Yes, yes." "Great, then be gone. Oh wait, I almost forgot. You aren't going to join forces against us again, are you?" Makoto asked as one of his men pulled a glowing hot flat piece of metal from the fire nearby. "No," the prisoner quickly replied. "Good, but there has to be a tribute to the daimyo." One guard wrapped his arms around the prisoner's waist, and another pulled both hands out in front of him. Just as quickly, Makoto swung his sword, leaving his guard holding 2 severed hands. Another stepped over, taking each of the prisoner's stubs and placing the hot flat metal against them until the flesh sizzled and smoked. As he screamed in agony, the handless man's knees began to buckle, but the guard with his arms around his waist propped him up. "It's over. Now I know you will not be back. Go warn your friends before I change my mind." Makoto gestured to the guard to release the remaining prisoner, who slowly stumbled off. As one guard tossed the pair of severed hands into the fire, Makoto heard another warrior ask, "I thought the punishment was death for all crimes?" "You think he is going to live?" Makoto stated as he sheathed his sword and walked away thinking, "There is another 50 added to the count." Days passed as they fought one battle after another, with the same scene playing out after each. Each time, Makoto could feel the darkness within grow as he fought to hold it back. He didn't know how, but he wanted to share his life with Yasu and their unborn child. Then the day came, as he stood looking down the line of prisoners, giving the same speech about crime and punishment. It happened. The darkness he had fought to restrain took hold as men sentenced to death began chanting, "Shinigami, Shinigami, Shinigami." Chills visibly ran through all his men standing guard as they looked to each other, then began kicking the prisoners to shut them up, no matter the force they inflicted upon them to get them to stop chanting Shinigami. It continued. Grinning as he began his death march down the line, a form of glee grew with the stroke of each neck to his sword. When his sword touched the neck of the last man in line, Makoto stopped as he had many times before, but this time he stood listening to the soul man chanting, "Shinigami." In front of Makoto, his guard reached down to pull the glowing hot metal from the flames. At that moment, Makoto whisked his sword forward, almost severing the last man's head from his body. The guard that had been standing ready to secure the prisoner around the waist asked, confused, "That was the last one. We're not sending a message anymore?" Makoto turned slightly in the man's direction, blood flowing down his katana. "The message has been received. I am Shinigami, monster of darkness. They now know me." Over the next few days, Makoto fought, brutally killing countless enemy soldiers and even a few of his own men, who ventured too close in battle. His only thought was of the voices of now decomposing corpse chanting, "Shinigami." The darkness inside had taken over to such extreme that even messengers feared bringing him news for fear of losing their heads. "Sir, Daimyo Nobunaga requests your presence without delay," a trembling young boy informed him. "Boy, I have a war to win. I don't have time for insignificant questions from a little—" "Fine, fetch my horse," Makoto ordered as he gathered his things for the half-day's ride to the daimyo's palace. Makoto rode fast, not stopping for anything, not even to allow his horse a moment of rest. Foaming sweat lathered up around the light padded material he sat upon as they neared the palace. From the moment they left, his mind played the words in rhythm of huffs contacting earth. Shinigami, Shinigami. Approaching the palace gates, Makoto could feel his horse slowing down. Stopping in front of the gates, Makoto dismounted just as the horse fell to the ground. Unconcerned with the horse's condition, Makoto approached the guards. "If you value your lives, you will open the gate now." With only a second's hesitation, Makoto drew his sword and sheathed it before either of the guards realized what had happened. Slowly, they looked to each other just before one had blood gushing from a slit throat. Witnessing the other fall to the ground bleeding out, the remaining guard began pushing on the gate with all his might until it was fully open. Walking past the remaining guard and through the gate, Makoto could see Ryu approaching from across the garden area. "Take me to him now, Ryu." Sensing Makoto's tone and seeing the dead guard laying just outside the gate, Ryu waved him by as if to say, "You know the way." The smell of salt and copper filled the passageways, a smell Makoto knew well from months of battle. Something he couldn't wrap his mind around was just how much there was to create such a strong odor throughout the palace. He wondered no more as he entered the throne room and saw the floor ran thick with blood. The daimyo screamed, "Was it you? Tell me now!" A larger guard held one of the palace guards with his arms behind him while pulling him back to expose his stomach to the daimyo. Quickly shaking his head back and forth did nothing to save him. With one swift strike, the daimyo sliced his stomach, exposing his insides. "Who was it then?" the daimyo demanded as he reached inside the man's stomach and began pulling on his guts until he was lifeless. Makoto looked around and noticed there were only 2 guards left of the dozens that once lined the walls of the throne room. None of them concerned him as he walked tall into the room and over where the man was now being carried away, his guts dragging on the floor. Makoto looked from the gruesome sight to Nobunaga, where he was met with Daimyo's knife to his throat. "What do you know about it, Makoto?" the daimyo demanded. "I am here as you requested. I am here at your service, daimyo. How can I be of help?" "Bring her to me!" Nobunaga screamed. 2 guards entered the room, holding onto someone draped in black cloth, stopping near the daimyo's throne, awaiting his next command. You know nothing about this!" he screamed, pressing his knife against Makoto's throat until it started cutting skin. Makoto stood still, holding his ground, with the only thought going to his mind, "I am Shinigami. I fear nothing." "What do you request of me, my daimyo?" Makoto calmly asked. His calmness seemed to infuriate Nobunaga. "I want to know who defiled my daughter!" With a wave of his hands, a guard removed the black cloth, revealing Yasu standing naked with her belly swollen with his child. Pointing toward his daughter, Nobunaga continued to scream, "She was to be the source of much more land and power, once married to another. Now she is worth no more than a baishunfu, prostitute." The darkness that had taken Makoto over retreated at the sight of Yasu being restrained and on display. Now he felt a burning rage, as all he wanted to do was kill everyone who had laid eyes upon her body. However, he was still bound to his code as a samurai. As he spoke, he could feel the blade cutting with every syllable. "It is my life that grows within her,